Hello, welcome to our short little video on story structure. So a definition of story structure that I like is that structure is the arrangement of events to cause an emotional response in the audience. So it's a deliberate choice of the author or the creator of the text to arrange the story events, otherwise known as plot points, in a way that provokes the emotional response or even the thoughts if we're thinking more about structure in terms of essay or non-fiction writing. All right, I want to be clear that there are numerous theories about story structure out there. Anything from there's just one story structure type right out to infinite numbers of story structures. The version I like the best is that there are 6 basic story structure archetypes. Now, an archetype is a common type of story, a common structure, something that we're used to seeing regularly. Just like there are character archetypes as well. There's a hero, there's a villain, there's a helper. Those are archetypes. They're the common types of characters that we're used to seeing. And there are story structure archetypes. Also, there are similar patterns to story structures that we tend to get used to over time. So the first one is person in a whole, and this is one of the most common story structure archetypes. We start off with our protagonist or the hero, and they start off in an okay or normal place, and then something bad happens. Now that could be because of a character flaw, could be disaster, could be because of the antagonist or the villain, and things get worse and worse and worse for the character. The protagonist tries to overcome, but they fail, and then the protagonist starts to win at the end, and the protagonist ends, and it's a happy ending. So that's the most common type. A lot of your Hollywood-style action movies are like this, with this structure. The next type that's really common is the Cinderella story type. So if you're familiar with Cinderella, at the start, Cinderella, our protagonist, starts in a fairly bad situation. She's not particularly well looked after by her stepsisters, and then she has some good fortune. The fairy godmother comes in and gives her the chance to go to the ball. More good things happen. She meets the prince, but then some bad things happen that take her back down to the low point here. The time runs out, and the magic ends, and she's back to her low point. But then there's some good fortune happens when the prince comes back into her life, and the ending is that Cinderella ends up in a much better place than when she started. So this is another happy ending. The third type that we've got is the rags to riches type. So this is often where the protagonist starts in a bad situation. Maybe they're poor, they suffer from violence, abuse, or neglect. Maybe they don't have a girlfriend or boyfriend, and things start here. They progress, and as they get to the end of the story, they get their goal. This is a common arc for comedies, especially romantic comedies. They start off lonely with no boyfriend or girlfriend. They have a lot of silly attempts. Maybe there's a love interest, but through crazy things happening that make us laugh, they keep failing. Although the story is in an upwards trajectory, and then it ends happily. So each one of those structures has a reverse, and they are the sad endings. So the first one to look at is a reverse of the person in a whole, and that is the rise and fall, or the Icarus stories from Greek mythology. So here our protagonist starts off in a low place. Maybe they're in prison, they have no friends, or there's no love in their life. They overcome their challenge and they achieve their goal, but because of some character flaw, such as greed or arrogance or impatience, a bad habit, they lose everything and they end up with losing everything they've lost, and usually they're in a worse place than they were before. This is a common structure for Shakespeare's tragedies. Macbeth, for example. Macbeth starts off here. He's not king. He wants to be king. He kills the king and gets everything he wants, except he loses everything by the end because he continues on his ambitious trail of destruction and loses everything at the end. The next one is the story arc, the Oedipus story, and you see this is the reverse of the Cinderella story. Again, Oedipus comes from Greek mythology, and we start off with the protagonist in a fairly good place. Oedipus was born, he was in a fairly good place, but something happens. In the case of Oedipus, his king father receives a prophecy that his son will overthrow him or kill him, so one of those things, and so the father banishes his newborn son, leaves him out in the forest or something like that to be found, and so that's pretty bad. But Oedipus, luckily, is rescued by another king and is raised very well, and he ends up finding his way back to his original homeland. He doesn't know it's his original homeland. He kills the monster that's afflicting his homeland, and he eventually becomes king. Yay! Overthrowing his father, replacing his father as the original prophecy stated. Now, of course, you don't have to have this in your own Oedipus story, but the idea is there. There's the reward. But when Oedipus becomes king, he marries his mother. He doesn't know it's his mother at the time, and the gods say, no, you cannot marry your mother, and so he gets punished, and he ends up losing everything and ends up in a worse place than when he was over here. So this is a really interesting story structure. And the last one is just the straight up tragedy. The protagonist starts in a good place. They have friends, money, success, love, promotion, all those things are going well. But it's usually because of a character flaw, such as greed or arrogance or impatience or stubbornness. They push things too far and they end up losing the most important things. Maybe it's their job, maybe it's their freedom, they might get locked up, their success. A lot of warning stories are like this. So the Wolf of Wall Street, for example, follows this type of story structure where the characters end up losing everything. A lot of stories that focus on the cost of greed focus on this type of story, where this character might have lots of money, but they lose the love of their life. All right, that's it for story structures. And if you've got any questions, let me know. Bye.